I'm going to show you a fun texture stitch that's called a bobble. Sometimes it's referred to as a popcorn stitch as well. So this is what it looks like, and it is worked into one stitch along your fabric. You do a bunch of increases and knit a few rows just on those increases, and then you decrease the stitches quickly, and then you go on your way. So I'm going to demonstrate the way that this goes. So what I'm going to aim for here is 2 more bobbles across this next row, kind of keeping this one in the center and then making the bobbles here and here. So I'll work over 5 stitches or so. Like this. All right, and then in this next stitch here, I'm going to increase 4 stitches. So I'm going to knit into the front and the back a total of 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. So out of 1 stitch now I have 5 here. And then I'm going to turn my work over. And this happens to be stockinette stitch. So now I'm going to purl back on those 5 stitches. And then turn again and knit those 5 stitches. So you're building a little bit of a panel just from that one original stitch. And bobbles can be, fewer stitches than this one. This is 5. There are 3 stitch bobbles there. You can make them all different sizes. But the technique that I'm showing you can work for, I think odd numbers would probably work the best. Odd number of stitches would work the best. And there are other ways to do a bobble, but this is just the way I learned this past fall, and I think it works well. All right, so we have the original row where we increased to 5 stitches. We purled, knitted, and purled back again. So that's increasing, and then 3 rows since that. All right, so now I'm here on the right side row, and what I'm going to do is slip these 2 stitches, and then I'm going to decrease this stitch over this one. So I'm just going to bring this one over here, almost as though you're binding off in reverse, and then I will slip this stitch, the center stitch, back to the right needle, and then bring this one over, bind off that number 2 stitch, and then bring this back to the left hand needle, slip this stitch over the top, and then shift one more time, slipping the stitch back to the right needle, and then pulling the last stitch, the 5th stitch, over. And so now you're left with this 1 stitch on the right hand needle, which is just what you wanted. You're back to the same stitch count that you started with. And then once you've completed that bobble, you continue on your row. So I'm going to knit past this center bobble and put another bobble in this stitch right here. So starting with increasing, knit into the front, in the back, in the front, in the back, in the front to make 5. So these 5 stitches here. Turn around and purl back or work back, depending on the type of texture you want your bobble to have. You could do a garter stitch bobble. You can do a reverse stockinette stitch bobble if you choose. It's just up to you. And this is row 2. Turn again. Work row 3. Turn it again. And sometimes, because the stitches in this new fabric that you're creating is a little bit crowded, you need to push your bobble fabric forward a little bit to get it to pop to the front. You can do that right before you do your decreasing, and then as you decrease, that little mound will come to the front of your work. All right, so we've got these 5 stitches attached to the panel, and we're going to slip the first 2, and then bring this stitch, decrease it or bind it off over the center stitch, like so. Slip this center stitch back to the right hand needle, bring this stitch over the center stitch, shift the center stitch again, bring this one over top, and then the last time slip this stitch back to the right hand needle and bring the final increased stitch over the top, and then you've got your bobble. Sometimes over the course of all that binding off or decreasing, your stitch yarn, your working yarn, will get a little bit loose around your needle. And what you can do there is just pull this working yarn, just give it a little bit of tension, and it will draw it up, and it will help your bobble pop, and it will make it so that it won't slip to the back too easily. It'll be closed in the back. All right, so then we're going to just knit on to the end of the row, and I'll show you what I mean about keeping the bobble to the front by keeping the tension on that stitch. So if you look at the back side of the fabric now, well, here first let's admire those. There are bobbles. And I'm going to show you the flip side of this now. If your tension is taut for your continuation of that row, this is the back side here of that first bobble that I made before the video, and it just makes it so that this bobble can't poke through to the back even if you are pushing on it. And as I close the purl row back on this pair of bobbles I just made, it will also kind of close the fabric on the back side so that those bobbles will not be able to pop through to the back side either. So that is how you make bobbles or popcorns. You can make them, like I said, you can make them in different widths, and you can make them in different heights as well. You could get, this one produces a nice circle at this gauge and with that number of increases, but you could make sort of an elongated bobble if you like, sort of a tall one, if you knit back and forth on your panel more rows. So you should have fun with it because it's kind of a whimsical texture that you can get and make some nice relief on a stockinette stitch piece, or even a garter stitch piece, reverse stockinette stitch. It makes nice texture and it's kind of fun. We need a smile here. There. Okay, so have fun with your bobbles. Thank you.